Masechet Baba Kama Daf Mem Bet. We're discussing the pasuk that if a short tam kills a person, then the pasuk says Sakol Yisakel. That's number one. You stone the animal, and obviously you can't eat it. Then the pasuk goes on and says also Velo Yachelet Besaro, from which we learn that not only that you can't eat it, but also you cannot get benefit from it, not from its flesh, not even from its skin. And then the end of the pasuk says Ba'ala Shor Naki, and we're wondering, what does this come to teach us? We saw that there was one opinion that says this comes to teach us no hana'ah. We saw the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, and now we're going to see yet another opinion. Tanya idach, Ba'ala Shor Naki, Rabbi Yosef Galili Omer Naki Mideme Veladot. This extra phrase comes to teach that if an ox gores a person and causes a woman and causes the woman to miscarry, the owner does not have to pay for the fetus. No payment for that. Okay. Amar lo Rabbi Akiva, Harehu omer ki nasu anashim v'nagifa isha, anashim velo shevarim. Rabbi Akiva says, listen, I agree with the law that one would not have to pay for miscarried fetuses, but this is obvious. I don't need Baal Ashor Naki to teach me that, because I can learn it from a different derivation, from the law in Shemot of two men who are fighting each other, and while they're fighting, they harm a woman who's standing by and cause her a miscarriage. And over there it says that the fighting man has to pay for the fetus. Now, we can derive from that, since it says the word anashim there, if anashim are fighting, v'chiyenatsu anashim yachdav, so why does it specify anashim? To exclude only if humans are fighting and they cause a miscarriage, then they have to pay, but not oxen. If an ox is going and running around wildly and it causes a miscarriage, the owner does not have to pay. So the Akiva says, I already know that derivation from this pasuk in Shemot, and therefore I don't need Baal Ashor Naki to teach me that the owner is not liable for the fetuses. Okay, good question. Shapir Kama Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara notes, that's a good question that Rabbi Akiva asks, and we have to find answers. So now we're going to present 4 different explanations for why we need Baal Ashor Naki to teach me that the owner does not have to pay for when his ox destroys a fetus. Why we need that phrase, even though we can derive it from the men fighting and hitting a pregnant woman. So here's answer number 1. Amar Rav Ula bered Rav Idi isterich salka datechamina anashim velo shevarim hadomim laanashim ma anashim muadim al shevarim muadim hatam michayev ketab rachamana Baal Ashor Naki de patur. It says, listen, I need this pasuk Baal Ashor Naki, because I would have thought, if I only had the pasuk regarding men fighting, that when it says men, they have to pay, but not oxen that are similar to humans. In what way? Just like humans are always mu'ad, adam mu'ad le'olam, a person has to pay a full amount for damages, no matter what, whether it's the first time or not. Even if it's just by accident, by negligence, they have to pay. And so too, I would think that we're comparing anashim to a shor muad, which is also like a human. A human is always muad. A shor, once it's muad, is muad. So I would think that it's only coming to say that humans have to pay when they're fighting and they cause a miscarriage, but shor muad does not have to pay. Okay, but that derivation only applies to shor muad. But if it was a shor tam, then this pasuk doesn't say anything about it. So I would assume that if a shor tam causes a miscarriage, then the owner does have to pay. That's what I would assume without this pasuk. That's why I need Baal Ashor Naki, which is in the context of shor tam, to teach me that also in shor tam one is patur. That is what Rav Ula bered Rav Idi says. But Rava challenges that with something you might be thinking yourself. Amar Rava, Yatziva be'ar'a v'giyora b'shmei Shemaya, this is coming from one of the curses that it says in the Torah, that the native, meaning the one born in the country, will go low down, meaning Israelites, and the stranger, the immigrant that comes in, will become on high, meaning a foreign nation will come in and take over the land, and subjugate the people that were born there and that are living there. One of the curses of Bnei Yisrael, losing control of Eretz Yisrael. The application here is that a topsy-turvy world where it doesn't make sense, that which is up should be down, and that which is that's supposed to be down is up. Okay, the application here is that it does this. Even the premise doesn't make sense. If you say that Anashim is referring to Shor Mu'ad, is comparing to Shor Mu'ad, and telling me that only humans have to pay for fetus, but a Shor Mu'ad that harms does not have to pay for a fetus, but I only know that a Shor Mu'ad would be patur, I would think a Shor Tam is chayav. That doesn't make sense. Is there ever a case that a Shor Mu'ad is patur and a Shor Tam is chayav? That means Shor Mu'ad is you're making it lower liability, even though it should be higher, and Shor Tam, which should be lower liability, you're saying is more liable than a Shor Mu'ad. That just makes no sense. There is no logic to think that. So no, I would never have thought that a short mu'ad does not have to pay for fetuses, but a short tam does have to pay for fetuses. That's why they need the pasuk. This is illogical. I never would have thought that in the first place. So Rabbi, who challenged the previous one, offers his own. It's similar, but with a fix, according to this logic. So far, Rabbi here is the same exact as Ula, right? And still here again, we're saying, if I had only the pasuk about men fighting, I would think that men who are fighting have to pay for a fetus, but not shor mu'ad, which is similar to a human. And so now I would think so far that shor mu'ad does not have to pay for a fetus. And if I knew that, I would make a further step as a kal vachomer. V'kal vachomer letamid depitireh. Then all the more so, a shor tam also is patur. So right at this point, right, if not for the pasuk bal shor naki, I would think that shor mu'ad and shor tam are patur from paying for the fetus. But that's why I need the pasuk to come say not so. Which part is not so? Hadar katav rachamana bal ashor naki tam patur mu'ad chayav. If it's saying that the owner of an ox is not liable, and the context of this is shor tam, or we're talking about a shor tam that kills a person. So this pasuk, this phrase is coming to add only a shor tam is patur, but actually a shor mu'ad would be hayav. And so this pasuk is coming to counter what I first would have learned from the pasuk about men fighting, that the men fighting have to pay, and not shor mu'ad. This pasuk comes and says, wait a second, only a shor tam is patur. For a shor mu'ad, one has to pay for the fetus. Okay, so that's the Ravat doesn't have to deal with the problem of topsy-turvy world, although his conclusion is different from what we saw before, because according to this, one would have to pay. If his ox, a shor mu'ad, killed a fetus, he would in fact have to pay. So the logic makes sense, but here's the problem. Amar le Abaye, Elemeata gabe boshet name nemahachi. Wait a second, Abaye says, Rava, if you follow this logic here, and you derive something from an inference, and then you apply a kal vachomer to it, well, then you're going to end up with a conclusion that if my animal gores, as shor mu'ad, would also have to pay for humiliation. Now, we know that's not true. Humiliation is only paid by a person who directly causes damage to another person, but not by one's animal. But look at the logic, right? This is just proving that your logic is wrong, because look at the wrong conclusion that we would come to if we apply the same logic to another case, a case in Devarim of men fighting, and a woman tries to stop the fighting and grabs onto the privates of one of the guys fighting, causing him humiliation. And the law is that the kasotat kapa, cut off her hand, but that actually means that she has to pay boshet. So that's the pasuk from which we learn that one pays boshet. And we could say over there also, it says anashim, that when men are fighting, So we could infer anashim velo shevarim adumim lanashim, ma nashim muadim av shevarim muadim. So we could learn from there that only when humans are fighting, one pays boshet. But now when oxen that are similar to humans are fighting, meaning shor muad, one will not have to pay boshet. And then if shor muad does not have to pay boshet, then all the more so if one shor tam causes humiliation, one would not have to pay. That's what I would think if I had only that pasuk in Devarim. Hadar katav rachamana bala shor naki tam patur muad chayav. But now we have this pasuk here, that for a short time the owner is not liable, so that comes to exclude short time, which I already knew was patur. So it must be this pasuk is coming to say a limitation. Only a short time is patur, but there's another one that is chayav, and that would be muad. So by the same logic, it's the same exact thing here, parallel, just replacing the two men fighting that hit a pregnant woman with a different law of two men fighting, and the pregnant woman has to pay boshet for grabbing one of them, and I could come to the conclusion that for a shor muad, just like you came to the conclusion here, that for a shor muad, what the owner has to pay for the fetus, so too a shor muad one has to pay for a boshet. But we know this is not true. And so maybe if it will say, oh yeah, I agree with that conclusion, short time does have to pay that. If so, then the original braita that we're analyzing this whole time, it should have said, according to the Biosei Galili, what do we learn from Baal Shor Naki? That for a short tam, one does not pay for the demei veladot, and one also does not pay boshet, but shor muad does. But the Biosei does not say that. He doesn't talk about boshet at all, which means it's not part of the equation. Otherwise, he would have had to say both, because both are learned in the same way. And so, since this would be a wrong conclusion, therefore this logic must be wrong, and if this logic is wrong, then this logic is also wrong. And so, Abaye rejects Rava in this way. So rather we go back to the drawing board, and Rava also retracted that opinion, and both Abaye and Rava offer a new third opinion. Anashim and ason ba'isha yanshu yesh ashon ba'isa lo yanshu. Regarding the humans that are fighting and cause a miscarriage, there is a distinction between whether they kill the woman or not. The Pesukim there, you can go look at the Pesukim there, and it gives two scenarios. If there is no ason, then the man who caused the miscarriage has to pay. Right, that's yanshu, means has to pay for the fetus. But if there is ason, meaning if the man killed the woman, then he does not pay for the fetus. The reason is because kim le b'drabamine. If you do damage and you deserve capital punishment, then you only get capital punishment and you don't pay for the damages. So regarding people, we make a distinction between damages only and if one deserves and killing. If there is a murder involved, then you don't have to pay for damages of the fetus. So that distinction applies only to humans. Velo shevarim, but if my ox does that, not so. Even if my ox kills a person, I still have to pay for the fetus. That's what I would think if I had only the Pesukim regarding the men fighting. Hadar ketab rachamana ba'ala shor naki patur de patur. And that's why I need the Pasuk regarding an ox goring to teach me, don't think that conclusion is correct. Rather, it's not true. If an ox gores a person, and you'd kill the ox in that case, then the owner does not have to pay for the fetuses. And so you might think that it would have to pay in such a case from derivation that humans are not animals, and that's why I need the pasuk. All right, so that's the opinion of Abaye and Rava. However, this too is challenged. Matkif la Rav Ada bar Ahava. Atu ba'ason talya milta, bechavana talya milta. Rav Ada bar Ahava says, does it depend on whether the woman is killed or not? It doesn't. There's another factor, which is intent. If the people fighting, if they have intent to kill the woman. If, in general, if a person has intent to kill another person and kills him, then they deserve the capital punishment, and then they don't pay damages. But if there is no intent, if the two men fighting, if one of the guys is intending to punch and kill the other man, but he misses and by mistake harms the woman and causes her death, he doesn't get the death penalty. You don't deserve the death penalty for causing death to someone that you didn't mean to kill. And therefore, you can't just apply this. Therefore, you have to take this into account, the fact that there is a difference between intent in the case that you're deriving from. So, Ravada Barava offers a modified explanation. Ela Maravada Barava. Anashim ki nitkavenu ze lazeh אף אגב שיש אסון באישה יענשו, כי נתכוונו לאישה עצמה לא יענשו. When humans are fighting, then we make a following distinction. If they mean to kill each other, the other men, then even if they end up by mistake killing the woman, they do not get the death penalty, and because they didn't mean to kill the woman, and therefore they do have to pay for damages, including for the fetus or whatever other damages they cause. But if they intend to kill the woman, for whatever reason, they're fighting with each other, and then, and then one of them decides, you know what, I'm going to harm this woman also, and punches and kills her, then he deserves death penalty for killing her. And he then does not pay for any other damage because of Kim Le B'Rabamine. So we see that regarding humans fighting, we apply that rule, that distinction. So humans means only for humans. Velo shevarim tafilun tkavenu laishatz ma yanshu. If I had only this pasuk, I would think that we don't make the distinction regarding oxen. That regarding oxen, no matter what it's thinking, and no matter what the ox is intending, even if it intended to kill this particular woman, it had intention to kill, nevertheless, the owner does have to pay damages. Because after all, the ox goes ahead and the ox will get stoned, but the person would have to pay damages also. That's what I would have thought. That's why the pasuk says, when an ox goes and kills a person, the ox gets killed. That's true. The ox gets capital punishment. And don't think, based on what you might have thought from here, that the owner does have to pay. Not true. Once it kills someone and the ox gets what's coming to it and gets stoned, the owner does not have to pay for damages, and damages includes the miscarriage that it causes. It does not have to pay. That's why I need the pasuk. Okay, so this is the fourth and final answer. All this was a question, was a challenge of Rabbi Akiva. See, everybody agrees on what the conclusion is going to be. But the question is just, how do we get, why do we need the pasuk? And so Rabbi Akiva said, I could learn that the owner of an ox does not have to pay for the fetuses. I could learn that by derivation from the law of two men fighting. And so it's obvious I don't need Baal Ashor Naki. And now we just showed 4 ways in which this would not be sufficient. I would have gotten to the wrong conclusion if I had only those Pesukim. And that's why I need Baal Ashor Naki to teach me that, in fact, the owner of the ox does not have to pay for the damage to the fetus. And this last answer that we just brought is supported by a baraita that Rav Chagai, when he came from the south, he brought a baraita that explains the law exactly as Rav Ada bar Ahava did. Next, we have yet another interpretation of what we derive from this extra phrase, Baal Lashon Naki. Tanya idach, Baal Lashon Naki, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Naki mideme aved. This Baal Lashon Naki, that says, a short tam, kills a person, the owner does not have to pay anything. This is talking about if an ox kills a slave. If an shor mu'ad kills a slave, the Torah says there's a fixed amount, 30 dinar, no matter what. No matter if it's a young or old slave, weak or strong, it's always the same amount. But that's only for a shor mu'ad. And Rabbi Akiva derives from here, right? Baal shor naki, which is said in shor tam, means you do not pay. Even for aved, you do not have to pay. Okay. Now we're going to challenge this. V'nema Rabbi Akiva lenafsheh v'alo atzmo en mishtalem ela migufo habiyeu lebet din v'yishalem lecha. Rabbi Akiva should ask a question on himself. What does that mean, on himself? Rabbi Akiva challenged on the previous stuff. He challenged Rabbi Eliezer with this following argument. Let's just review what he said there. Rabbi Eliezer said that Baal Ashur Naki comes to exclude paying chasi kofir. If a shor tam kills a person, you don't pay half kofir. The whole kofir law is only for shor mu'ad. If shor mu'ad kills a person, then the owner has to pay ransom. Shor tam that kills someone, the owner does not pay anything at all, not even half. That's what Rabbi Eliezer derived from this pasuk. And there, Rabbi Akiva challenged him and said, if shor tam has limited liability. It's only paid from the value of the goring ox. That's it. And here, the goring ox is killed, it's stoned, and you can't get any benefit from it. So what is there left to pay, right? You can say, okay, bring the ox to Bet Din and let him pay. Go collect money from the ox. There is no ox, it's gone. So there's no possibility of payment in the shor tam that's killed. And that was a challenge, and Rabbi Eliezer had to give all kinds of cases where even though the ox gored someone, it got off of capital punishment on a technicality, like it intended to kill only another animal, and ended up killing a person. So it doesn't get killed because of its intention. That's what Rabbi Eliezer had to answer to Rabbi Akiva. Okay, but now let's take Rabbi Akiva's question and now use it against him. So you always be careful before you challenge someone. They may challenge you with the very same thing. So let's ask Rabbi Akiva his own question. How could you say that I need the pasuk Baal Ashur Naki to teach me that if my animal gores an eved, I don't have to pay 30 shekel? How would he pay anyway? The whole law of shor tam means limited liability. I only have to pay from the body of the goring ox. And in this case, the goring ox is going to be killed, going to get capital punishment. And so we could say to Rabbi Akiva, no, there's no possibility, right? Because it only pays from its body, and so we can say, okay, bring it to Bet Din and let it pay you. The owner can say, here, go ahead, collect your money from the ox. It's there, it's stoned on the floor, right, all dead, and you can't use it for anything. So isn't it obvious that there's no possibility of payment in the shor tam that kills an eved? Good question. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Kishe kadam be'alav ushhato. Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak says, I have an answer. We're talking about a case where the owner went ahead and did shechita on the animal before the verdict. Yesterday we were talking about if someone does shechita after the verdict, before it gets stoned. And we saw there that you can't get any benefit from it. But here we're talking about even before the verdict was issued, the owner goes and does shechita, in which case, so I might have thought it is valuable, it has value, you could use that meat, and therefore I might have thought that if my animal went and killed an eved, and then I slaughtered it immediately before the verdict, and so it has value, then I would have to sell that and pay 30 shekel for or up to the value of that meat. I would have to pay for up to 30, towards the 30 shekel, I would have to pay for the eved, and that's where Rabbi Akiva says, no, even if in the case where I killed it before, I still do not have to pay. Baal Ashur Naki. It's coming to exclude this case. I might have thought maybe I have to pay for that meat that I did shechita on, that's kosher meat. Now the pasuk comes to teach me not so. Since this animal is subject to the death penalty, it's true the verdict didn't happen yet, but it's going to be liable. It is liable to death. It wasn't said yet. So even though I slaughtered it, I don't have to pay from it because still the law applies across the board. That's what Rabbi Akiva needs. That pasuk from Baal Ashur Naki. I never have to pay 30 shekel for my animal killing an eved, not even in this case, because it is still liable to death. All right, ihachi. Okay, so Rav Shmuel gives a good answer, but now we ask, is if Rabbi Akiva can give this answer when he's challenged, why didn't Rabbi Eliezer, or why didn't rather Rabbi Akiva give that answer? Rabbi Akiva must have known this response, because he needs it for his own answer. So why didn't Rabbi Akiva apply the same answer and offer it to Rabbi Eliezer? In other words, why did he challenge Rabbi Eliezer when he could have said, "Oh, Rabbi Eliezer, in the case of a short time that kills a person, you don't pay chasi kofer." Well, wouldn't I know that? Isn't that obvious? Because the animal is worthless. So what is he going to pay from? And so Rabbi Akiva could have answered his own challenge to Rabbi Eliezer by saying that it's when the owner kills it before the verdict. And so the same answer. Why is he challenging Rabbi Eliezer when he has an answer already? And the answer to that is Hachinameh. Rabbi Akiva said, I'm going to ask Rabbi Eliezer anyway, because maybe Rabbi Eliezer will come up with an answer that's better than mine, and then he'll tell me, and then I'll learn something new, which is really fascinating, that sometimes when someone asks a question, sometimes you have an answer already. This happens all the time, right? A lot of times we'll ask someone, what do you think about this? I have an answer, but I'm not so satisfied with it. It's okay answer, but I want to see if there's a better one. If I tell you my answer, you're not even going to think about it. So I'm going to challenge you so that you have, and not give you an answer. That way, you'll come up with something, and maybe you'll come up with something that's better than what I came up with. So this is amazing. Even Rabbi Akiva, who had an answer, he was only challenging Rabbi Eliezer, not really to attack Rabbi Eliezer. He has an answer that Rabbi Akiva himself is relying on, but he's challenging to see if Rabbi Eliezer would come up with something better, which he does. Rabbi Eliezer nameh lishnei shekadam ushchato. Now, in what way is Rabbi Eliezer's answer better? Why didn't he give this simple answer that he did shechita first? In fact, yes, it killed someone, and the verdict was going to happen, but before the verdict, he went and did shechita, in which case it's kosher, and so the pasuk comes to teach me you don't pay chatzi kofer. Even in this case, who didn't kaven laharog et behema v'harag et ha'adam. Deshor la barket lahu kelal. So Rabbi Eliezer says, I have a better answer. Remember Rabbi Eliezer's answer at the end, which was right the best answer, depending on which type of fisherman he's like. So the better answer is that it intended to kill an animal, but ended up killing a person, where that ox is not liable to death at all. Even if you're going to end up bringing it to court, the court will say, what happened with this ox? It only intended to kill another animal. It killed a person by mistake. And even if we're after court, it would not get the death penalty. So in this case, where the animal does not get the death penalty at all, so we're not killing the animal, and there I might have validly thought, therefore he should pay chatzi kofer, because the animal is here, and so we can sell the animal and get money for the owner to pay chatzi kofer. Right? It's very logical to say that. That's why I need the pasuk. I need the pasuk that the owner is not liable to teach me that, no, you don't pay chatzi kofer ever. Naki. So here, I have a real reason to require the pasuk, because the animal actually is not liable to the death penalty and is available to use. But in this case, the answer that Rav Shmuel gave for Rabbi Akiva, where the animal in fact killed a human and intended to do so, and therefore it's deserving of capital punishment. It's just the verdict it didn't happen yet, and he did shechita before. In this case, I don't need a pasuk, right? So, because what's the difference if it was before the verdict or after the verdict? This animal is a dead animal already. It's not dead right now. I mean, I killed it, but it didn't get the verdict yet. But it's going to get the verdict, and so I don't need a pasuk to teach me that this, if in this case, when I did shechita before, then even there I can't sell it and pay. Pasuk's not. I don't need a pasuk for that. Right here, it's obvious. It's the animal is going to be deserving, subject to being killed, and therefore I don't need a pasuk to tell me that I don't have to pay for the Chatzi Kofer. So you see, Rabbi Eliezer's answer is much better, because I really need the pasuk when the animal does not deserve the death penalty. I don't need a pasuk at all to teach me that you don't have to pay when it is deserving of the death penalty. It's just the verdict didn't happen yet. All right, now that we know that Rabbi Eliezer, the answer that he gave is so much better than this answer that Shemuel says that Rabbi Akiva gave. You know what's so much better that we're going to have to go and ask about it again. Now, according to Rabbi Akiva, really this answer that Rav Shemuel gave is not sufficient, because if the animal actually killed someone, killed an Eved, and is therefore liable to the death penalty, even before the verdict, still nobody would think that, oh, it's before the verdict and I killed the animal, so now I can sell it and pay for the 30 shekel. No, it's a dead animal walking. It's already liable to death penalty, and therefore you can't say that I would have to pay for the Eved. I don't need a pasuk, a Baal Lashon Naki, to teach me in this case that there's no payment. So, in fact, by bringing in Rabbi Eliezer and showing how his answer was so much better than the answer we provided for Rabbi Akiva, we end up rejecting this answer that we had provided for Rabbi Akiva, and we're going to offer a second response. Ela amar Rav Aseh. Hai mileta mepi de Gabra Rabba Shemi'ali Umanu Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina. So Rav Aseh says, I have a good answer, and I heard it from a great man. Who is that? Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina. He said the following: Sakadatecha mina ho'il v'amar Rabbi Akiva af tam shechavar ba'adam meshalem b'mota nezek shalem mishtalem name deme eved ma'aliyah ketab rachamana ba'al ashor naki. Rabbi Akiva himself is of the opinion that there is a case where a shor tam pays full liability for causing damage to a human being. The case is back in the Mishnah on Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph, where a shor tam and a person are fighting with each other and both cause damage to each other. But let's say it's unequal amounts of, if it's equal amounts of damage, where they can just cancel each other out. If it's unequal amounts of damage, then let's say the person caused $100 of damage to the animal, but the shor tam caused $150 worth of damage to the human. So we take the difference between them, $50, and according to the Rabbi Akiva, the owner of the animal has to pay the full amount, nezek shalem. Tanakama there said, no, it's shor tam, so you only have to pay half of the amount of the difference. But Rabbi Akiva said, you pay the full amount. Now, since Rabbi Akiva himself said that there is a case where for a shor tam has to pay a full amount, I might think that maybe here also, where my shor tam went and killed an Eved, that I do have to pay the fine of 30 shekel, and although the animal is going to die, I have to pay from my own best property. So yes, there is a reason why I might have thought otherwise, and that's why I need the pasuk to say Baal Ashor Naki. Not true, right? There is one case where you have to pay nezek shalim for a shor tam when it's fighting with a human being. And they damage each other and so on. But don't think that applies also to an Eved. No, when a shor kills an Eved, the owner does not have to pay. The animal gets the death penalty. The owner does not have to pay. But that's the chidush. Okay, good. Amar Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Rav Aseh. V'ha tavreh Rabbi Akiva ligzizeh. Rabbi Zera tells Rav Aseh, the one who brought this answer, that this is not good, not a good answer, because Rabbi Akiva broke the force of his own fist. How did he do that? Detanya. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Yachol yishalem mina aliyah, Talmud Omar, kamishpat hazeh ye'aseh lo, migofo mishalem ve'eno mishalem mina aliyah. Regarding that very same case in that Mishnah, of the animal and the shor tam fighting each other, and the shor tam has to pay full amount of the difference between the damages, Rabbi Akiva himself asked, can it be that the owner of the ox has to pay from his own superior land? No, he doesn't, because it says, Kam mishpat hazeh ye'aseh lo. According to this judgment, one does this, that one pays from its own body only, and does not pay from an aliyah. So you see, in that case, the owner of the shor tam only has to pay from the body of the animal, which worked over there because in that case they didn't kill each other. So the short tam is not killed. The short tam, his body is available to be sold and pay for the full amount of damages up to limited liability of the amount of the animal. Not so in this case, where the short tam that killed an eved is itself being killed and is worth zero. So sorry. Even though you brought this in the name of a great rabbi, we have a serious challenge to it. Therefore, we offer another answer to help Rabbi Akiva against Rabbi Akiva's own challenge that he could have given himself. So here's the last and final answer. Ela amar Rava isterich. סקדתך מינהו אילו מחמירני בעבד יותר מבן חורין, שבן חורין יפה סלע נותן סלע, 30 נותן 30, ועבד יפה סלע נותן 30, משתלם נמי דמי העבד מן העלייה, כתב רחמנה בעל השור נקי. Here's what I might have thought without the pasuk of Baal Ashor Naki. I would say as follows. The Torah is actually more stringent regarding my ox killing a slave than it is if my ox kills a free person. Because if it kills a free person, then I have to pay kofed. Shor Mu'ad. Shor Mu'ad pays kofed, and assuming that the kofed is assessed based on the amount of the nizak, so then I see this free person that it killed. How much is he worth? Is he worth 1 selah? Okay, I'll pay 1 selah as kofed. If he's worth 30, I'll pay 30. And so sometimes I pay 30, but sometimes I pay less. But when my animal kills an eved, and then it makes no difference whether the eved is worth only a selah, I still have to pay 30. So you see that when it comes to my ox killing a slave for a shor mu'ad, it's actually more machmir on killing a slave than it is killing a free person. Therefore, I might have thought that a shor tam also, when my shor tam kills a person, even though when my shor tam kills a free person, no kofed, that we established already, but I might have thought that if it kills a slave, then I do have to pay the 30 no matter what, because the laws of slaves, ox killing a slave is more chamor. And so I would have thought it has to pay 30, even the short time, and even though the short is being killed, I have to pay from my own land. So that's what I might have thought, a logical conclusion. That's why I need the pasuk, Baal Ashor Naki, to teach me, don't think so. Even though the payment for killing a slave in the shor mu'ad is more stringent, but that stringency will not carry over for a shor tam, and I don't have to pay anything if my shor tam kills a person. All right, good. Rava's answer is so good that it's supported by a baraita Tanya Kivate de Rava. Baal Ashor Naki, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Naki mideme ayebed. This is a long baraita, and so it starts off with the conclusion of Rabbi Akiva, the short statement that we already saw before, that the phrase Baal Ashor Naki teaches me, according to Rabbi Akiva, that the owner does not have to pay if his shor tam kills a slave. Now, why do I need this pasuk? Isn't it obvious from a kal vachomer? Now we're going to bring 2 kal vachomers. Show we could have learned this without the pasuk. And then Rabbi Akiva is going to say, no, but I cannot, these kal vachomers are not good enough. And then he's going to bring Rava's logic. So here's the 2 kal vachomers against Rabbi Akiva. V'alo dinu, wouldn't I know, wouldn't it be obvious that a short time does not have to pay for killing a slave? Ma keshechiyeh beben chorin, chalakta bo ben tam lemuad, af keshechiyeh be'abed, nechalek bo ben tam lemuad. I know the Torah says I am liable when it's a shor mu'ad. I'm liable when it kills a slave, and I'm also liable when it kills a free person. I have to pay the kofed. So when my shor tam kills a free person, now I have a distinction between if it's a shor tam and a shor mu'ad. I only have to pay if it's shor mu'ad. A shor tam that kills a person, there's no kofed. So that's clear there is a distinction. So too, it's just logical to apply the same thing, that when my animal kills a slave, there's a difference, that I only have to pay for a shor mu'ad, and I don't have to pay for a shor tam, right? It's just by analogy, it's the same thing. And furthermore, ve'od kal vachomer, and I'm going to even add more logic to this analogy and say, ma ben chorin shenoten kol shavyo halakta bo ben tam lemu'ad, if regarding when my animal kills a free person, where if shor mu'ad, I have to pay the entire amount. And there I make a difference, I make a distinction between tam and mu'ad, that I'd only have to pay the entire amount if it's mu'ad, where, right, the kofed is the full amount of the person, whatever it is. If the person is worth 100 that my animal killed, I have to pay 100. And yet, if it's tam, I don't pay anything at all. Then Eved sheno noten ela sheloshim eno din shenachalok bo ben tam lemuad. Then regarding the payment for a slave, where it's limited to 30, even for a mu'ad, let's say that the slave is worth 100. I don't have to pay 100. I'm only limited to 30. So that's the kavachomer. If regarding ben chorin, when I have unlimited liability of mu'ad and I pay nothing when it's tam for kofed, so too, all the more so when it's an eved, whereas limited liability, when it's mu'ad limited to 30, all the more so I would pay nothing if my short tam kills a slave. So really I can derive this from this double kavachomer here, and I don't need Baal Hashor Naki. Challenge to Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva says, not so. Lo, machmireni be'ebed yotemi ben chorim. It's true, if the slave is worth 100, then in that sense, it's a kula, they only have to pay 30, but it could be that the slave is worth only 1, and in that case, it's a chumrah. So there's a chumrah in Eved more than a free person, because sheben chorin nefesel noten sela, shiloshim noten shiloshim. If my shor mu'ad kills a person, and I have to pay the kofed based on the mehan nizak, and if it's a free person and that's only worth 1, I only pay 1. If it's worth 30, I pay 30. That's relatively lenient. But with an eved, where for a short mu'ad, I have to pay 30, right? No matter what, even if it's only worth 1. So you see, the law of eved is more machmir for mu'ad. Maybe it's also more machmir for short tam, and my short tam that kills a person, I also have to pay. That's what I would derive from the kavachomer, and that's why I need the pasuk to tell me not so. Tamud lomar Baal Hashor naki midemei ayaved. So you see, in this baraita, says this very same kavachomer reasoning that Rava brings, and so therefore this is the best explanation for Rabbi Akiva why he needs a pasuk, and we don't say, well, the animal's being killed, so what are you going to pay from? No, I might have thought that even for a short time, maybe in this case, the owner of the short time has to pay from his own property because of this kavachomer, and that's why indeed I need the phrase Baal Hashor Naki to teach me that the owner of a short time does not have to pay the 30 selah for killing an ayved. We end this stuff with a baraita that they can explain another phrase in the Pisukim that have to do with shor mu'ad that kills a person. Tanur banan v'emit ish o isha amar Rabbi Akiva v'chi ma ba ze lelamdenu im lechayav ala isha ki ish harekva ne'mar ki gach shor et ish or et isha. Look at the Pisukim here. When you have a shor mu'ad, so it's killed already. If it kills a man or a woman, then the ox gets stoned, and the owner technically deserves the death penalty himself. But he can also pay as a ransom for his life. So the question is, why do you have to say if it kills an ish or isha? If it's to tell me that yes, one is liable to pay whether his ox kills a man or a woman, well, I wouldn't need that, because if you look in the pasuk before, the pasuk before was about shor tam, that if someone's ox kills ish or et isha, so already here it tells me that the laws for killing a man are the same as the laws for killing a woman. That's by shor tam, and so it's right here. So therefore, I wouldn't need to say it again. I could assume that the law is the same. So therefore, I don't need the pasuk in the shor mu'ad to teach me that the law of shor mu'ad is the same. That you have to pay, that you kill the animal and you have to pay kofed whether it kills a man or a woman. I don't need the pasuk for that. So why do I need the pasuk? According to Rabbi Akiva, ela lakish isha leish ma ish nezakav liyorshav af isha nezakeha liyorashah. It's to teach me regarding the inheritance. Who gets this payment? If my ox kills a male, then, well, he's dead, so he's not going to get the payment, but rather it goes to his heirs. So too, if my ox kills a woman, the payment goes to her heirs, meaning not to her husband. All right, that's the option. When a woman dies, her husband, according to halacha, her husband will inherit her. Even if she has sons from a previous marriage, they don't get it. It goes to him. That's for the main inheritance. But this is an exception. Just like for a man, his heirs get it. So too here, for a woman, her heirs get it. If she doesn't have children, it'll go to her father, her family. Okay, now we ask, Rabbi Akiva, why is he saying this halacha? Does he not agree that in all cases a husband inherits the wife, right? That's the law. Does Rabbi Akiva not agree with that? Look, Rabbi Akiva says himself about this pasuk, v'yarash ota, the context is something completely different. The context is where someone doesn't have sons and doesn't have a father, and the father then has no uncles. So then, where do you send the inheritance? It goes to the nearest relative, v'yarash ota. The nearest relative will take ota, meaning the inheritance. So in the original context, ota means the inheritance, but the Rabbi Akiva's midrash says v'yarash ota is referring to a wife, that the husband inherits the wife. So Rabbi Akiva says, from here we know that a husband always inherits a wife, his wife's property. So Rabbi Akiva has a rule that a husband always inherits his wife's property. So why would he possibly say this? Here, this seems to contradict that in this case, and only in this case, the wife, the payment, the kofed payment that goes to this woman who was killed by an ox goes to her heirs and not to her husband. Why shouldn't this go to her husband like any other inheritance? Amar Lakish, lo amar ela bekofed. Shakish explains, Rabbi Akiva, you're right. In general, thinks that a husband inherits his wife anything that she has. But Rabbi Akiva is saying kofed is an exception to that rule. Why? Ho'il ve'en mishtalem ela le'achar mita, va'avale ra'ui, ve'nabal noten bera'ui kebamuchzak. See, because the kofed payment is only paid after she is dead, and therefore the payment that comes in is only a potential payment at the time right before her death. It's only that, we can see that she's going to die, and then the owner of the ox will have to pay, so we can write it down as receivables, but it's only receivables, it's only potential income, it's not muhzak, it's not already possessed, it's not already received, and the husband only gets inheritance, that which is in the inheritance already, that only deposits that were cashed, only checks that were deposited into the account that the husband gets. But any receivables that will be coming in but didn't come in at the time when the wife died, the husband does not get. She keeps it and goes to her heirs. And so that's true here. At the time of death, it's not yet collected, and since it's paid after her death, the husband doesn't get it. My Tama, what's the source that we know that this is only paid after death? And even though when the victim is about to die, we don't say that the husband is owed the ransom. We don't say that. Amar kera v'emit ish o isha hashor yisakel v'gam be'alav yumat im kofed yushat alav. Because the pasuk says, if an ox kills a man or woman, then you first have to give sikila to the ox. And also, the husband, the owner of the ox is worthy of death, but he can pay kofed. You see that the kofed payment is only stated after it states the liability of the ox that must be killed. The ox can only be deemed that worthy of the verdict against the ox, that it has to be killed. It can only be after the woman actually dies. You can't sentence the ox to death when the woman is still on her deathbed, even if you're sure she's going to die. Can't do that. So you have to wait till she dies. Then you can bring the ox to court and say the ox is liable to death. And then, and only after that, does it say that the owner of the ox who's worthy of death can pay kofed. So you see, the kofed payment does not kick in until after the verdict, against the ox, and the verdict against the ox does not kick in until after the woman dies. And by that point, the husband already got the inheritance, whatever she owned at the time of death, and he knew incoming money like an inheritance. Let's say her father dies after she dies, so that's money that comes into her inheritance, her possession after she dies. The husband doesn't get to inherit that. That would go to her heirs. So to here, it only goes, the payment goes to her heirs. So it's true, even though the Akiva says in general, a husband inherits his wife, that's only money that's already in her account, but not kofed that is only owed to her after she dies. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.